Hi everybody, welcome back to this series of videos about how to cook any farm produce any time of the year confidently in your kitchen and get good results. I get a lot of requests for recipes and cooking suggestions, and I've always grappled with what to do with that because I don't really use recipes for my normal everyday cooking. I do my cooking more based around concepts, and I feel like that works really well when you're trying to work with whatever's in season and you need a certain dimension of flexibility. So I'm making these videos to share with you guys how to think about cooking this way, so that you can confidently cook anything that's on the Farm Fresh list, anything that's coming off of any other farm, and you don't have to hunt around for a recipe that might or might not use seasonal produce and might send you to the grocery store to get some funky ingredient. This is just a very practical way to get dinner on the table fast, and get some wonderful nutrition in your family. And so part of why this works is that when you're cooking with really high quality produce, the produce itself brings so much flavor to the dish that the flavor combination is not quite as important. Yeah, it's still great for holidays and special occasions to pull out those old traditional recipes that everyone loves and these flavor combinations that are just really spectacular. But for getting dinner on the table fast every night, any family is going to be happy with produce that tastes amazing just cooked up and put on the table. I know my family is. So today's example is going to be polenta with sauteed vegetables, and I'm going to serve it with a couple of fried eggs. It would also be really great with fried chicken or baked chicken, or this time of year grilled chicken. That would probably be, like, if I was planning a dinner party around this, I would go for the grilled chicken, but today I didn't thaw any chicken and we have so many eggs coming in. Eggs it is, and you know what? It works. It's great. So I've chopped up here some of those awesome sweet Italian frying peppers that I'm putting in everything this time of year. Some of my 10-15 onions that are now sold out, but there'll be more next year. A Rosa Bianca eggplant, which is an Italian variety of eggplant, but you know what? I really don't stress about whether the variety is Italian or Asian. They both taste really good, even if you cross over cuisines. I've got my fresh herbs up here. I've got rosemary, oregano, and basil, which, if I'm thinking Italian-y, those are the three herbs I'm going to go for. I've got okra over here, which is a little bit less conventional, but it works. And I've got lots of okra. I've got some bigger ones here I'm going to cut into, and if they're all right, I'll use them, and that way none of you have to deal with them. And a few tomatoes. My San Marzanos are still making just a few tomatoes. So all this is going to get cut up with a little bit of garlic. I'm going to put some hot olive oil in the pan, saute the garlic, add just like for a few seconds. I'm just going to add it first and then immediately add the onion, then the peppers shortly after the onion. Then after a few minutes I'll add the eggplant. And I love sauteing vegetables that all need slightly different times to cook, because when you're in a real time crunch, you saute the one that takes the longest time, or you chop the one that takes the longest time to cook first, and you get that in the pan and you get it going, and then while it's in the pan cooking, you chop up your next vegetable, and it's a real time saver. So there's an idea for you. I'm going to let the onions and the peppers caramelize, and then let the eggplant get tender, and then throw in the okra. You want to have the pan hot and pretty oily when you put in the okra so it doesn't get slimy. The other thing that I've done is, if I wash the okra, which it's coming out of my garden, I know exactly where it's been. I don't always wash it, but if I do wash it, I towel dry each piece individually, and that really dramatically reduces the okra slime factor. And then the last thing I'm going to add are these tomatoes, partly because if I add them before the okra, it will make the okra slimy. And they just don't need too long. Oh, not actually the last thing, because the very last thing I'll add is the herbs. When you're working with The general rule of thumb is when you're working with dried herbs, you add them early in the process because it takes longer for them to release their flavors. If you're working with fresh herbs, you add them right at the end because they release their flavors quickly, and some of those lovely aromatics that you get with the fresh herbs deteriorate really quickly if they're cooked for too long. So that's going to be my vegetable dish. I'm going to trust for the purposes of this episode that y'all know how to fry eggs. Polenta is basically Italian grits, but it's a really fun, fast thing to whip up. It's a nice way for me to cook Italian without doing pasta, which I love, but does not love my digestive system. So it just makes me feel fatigued and tired if I eat too many processed wheat products. So I'm always on the lookout for alternatives. Things like spaghetti squash is another good one. You could do this exact meal and swap out spaghetti squash if that's what's in season, or you could just go with pasta if that works for your family. You could also do farro. It's a wheat, but you cook the whole berries just like you might cook rice, really. But it has this. It's a little chewier than rice in a good way. Because it's got that gluten, it has that little bit of resistance in it that I really enjoy farro, and it goes with it would go with sautéed vegetables like this and tomato. The other thing I wanted to say is you could pretty much omit any one of these vegetables and you wouldn't ruin the dish. Again, this is not a recipe. This is just a general concept for cooking. So like the okra especially, that's like I said, not very conventional. It could go in, it could not go in, just based on whether it's in season and based on whether or not you have access to it. You could leave the eggplant out if your family doesn't like eggplant, or if you just don't have eggplant. The only things I wouldn't leave out are the garlic and the onions. That's kind of the base for this dish. You could leave out the tomatoes though. I've done lots of pasta with vegetables. In this case, it would be polenta with vegetables. It doesn't have to have tomatoes. You could throw in some olives if you have olives on hand. That would be another little adaptation. Okay, so back to polenta. It's like Italian grits, basically, when you buy it at the store. In fact, you can buy it already made, but it's so easy to whip up. It's actually the same exact thing as grits, in terms of what you buy in the bag, and then it's just slightly different in how you cook it. So you do polenta with water, and I just followed the instructions on the bag. It was 1 cup of cornmeal, like coarse cornmeal is basically what polenta and grits are, and 3 cups of water, salt to taste, and then the recipe on this bag called for 1 cup of Parmesan mixed in at the end. I'll probably cut that back to about half of a cup. Probably be plenty. If you make too much polenta, you can't make too much polenta because you just put it in the fridge and it gets thick. Like this has already gotten thick because I've let it cool. I cooked it earlier. But when you put it in the fridge, it gets really thick, and you can actually kind of cut off slabs of it and lightly pan fry them later and heat up your leftover vegetables, and there's dinner for tomorrow or lunch, breakfast if you're adventurous. So anyhow, there's today's idea. Again, I'm looking here to give you concepts and a kind of different way to think about cooking and cooking farm produce. This is, they say, give a man a fish and feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. I could give you a recipe for exactly what's coming off of the farm today, and it would give you an idea for today and for this week. But I want to help you guys reach past that and just be confident with absolutely whatever is in season, whether that's from my farm or some other farm. And even if you don't have access to a local farm, or maybe you want to have your own farm someday but you don't yet, one of the things that you can do is you can start buying produce that's in season. Even if it's coming from California, it's a really great thing that you can do to establish that habit of following the seasons with what you're eating. So I hope this video helps you. I would love to hear from you about if you cook this, how it turns out, and what really flexible dishes or dinner concepts you use in your cooking from day to day. All right, thanks for tuning in. Good to see you guys. Bye-bye.